All right, I'm going to go over these first two examples on the CFA just so you kind of get an idea of what your answers should look like. So this first one was a little bit tricky just because of some negatives, but for the most part, I think a lot of you understand the process of converting. The first thing you're supposed to do is identify the conic section. And I know this is a parabola because I'm missing my x squared, which implies that a equals 0. And we know from our general form, if a equals 0, then we have a parabola. So we have a general form here, and we're trying to convert to standard form. So we're trying to convert to an equation that looks something like this. And I know this is what I want because if y is squared in the general form, your y term is also going to be squared in the standard form. So this is what we're trying to get to for our final answer. It's something that looks like this. The first thing that I notice when I look at the standard form is that there is no negative out here. And right now I have a negative in front of the y. And so rather than factoring out a -1, I just chose to reorder everything. So I moved the y's over to the other side and kept everything else here. So when you do that, you get 4x minus 45 equals now positive y squared because I'm moving it over to the other side plus 18y. If it makes you more comfortable to flip to the other side because that's what we've been doing, feel free. So I'm just going to swap these to be side by side. So then that gives me, y squared plus 18y equals 4x minus 45. And then I don't have any negatives to have to deal with over here on this side. So from here, in order to get this in factored form, I have to complete the square. So I'm going to take y squared plus 18y plus something, and that's still going to equal 4x minus 45. In order to get the value that goes here, that completes the square, you want to take this b value here, this middle number, divide it by 2, and then square it. So 18 divided by 2 is 9. 9 squared is 81. And because we're adding 81 to this side of the equation, we have to come over here and add 81 to this side of the equation so that the equation stays equal. Then I factor this. So y squared plus 18y plus 81 factors to be y plus 9 squared. And I can set that equal then to 4x. Negative 45 plus 81 gives me positive 36. And so the last thing I have to do, if you notice up here, your x does not have a coefficient in front. And right now we've got a 4 in front. So that means we have to factor this 4 out. So when I do that, I get y plus 9 squared here equals 4. Divide both of these by 4. That leaves me with x plus 9. And this right here is my parabola in standard form. The next one I want to look at is the hyperbola. And this one's a little bit tricky as well because of the factoring. So I know it's a hyperbola because a and c have opposite signs. So anytime your number in front of x squared and your number in front of y squared have opposite signs, that means it's a hyperbola. So I know it's a hyperbola, and that means this is the type of equation that I'm looking for. So hopefully my answer looks like this at the end. All right, so in order to do that, the best thing to do is to group your x's and your y's together to start. So I'm going to group 64x squared plus 384x. Then I've got minus 9y squared plus 36y. And then the 36 can get kicked over here, which gives me a positive 36 then. And then from there, I'm going to deal with my x's and my y's separately. But again, notice that there's nothing in front of your x and your y here. And completing the square is very tricky if you have a coefficient. So because there's a 64 in front of the x squared and a negative 9 in front of the y squared, those are the values I'm going to factor out before I complete the square. So I'm going to factor out a 64. That leaves me with x squared. 384 divided by 64 is 6x. And I know I'm going to have to complete the square, so I'm going to leave room to add whatever that number needs to be here. And then I'm going to factor out my negative 9. When I do that, I'm left with y squared plus 4y plus something equals 36. So that's where I'm at so far. And then after I have factored everything out of every x that I see and every y that I see, now I can complete the square because this is a function that allows me to complete the square, and so is this. So again, we're looking for this number divided by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and then squared. So that's a 9. Over here, 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. All right, so this is where a lot of people made an error. So we're not adding 9 and 4 to this side of the equation. We're actually adding whatever 9 times 64 is and whatever negative 9 times 4 is. So these two numbers together make up whatever I'm adding over here. And so 64 times 9 actually gives me 576, and it's positive. So because I'm adding 576 over here, I have to add it over here. And then the same thing is true with this other one here. I've got negative 9 times 4, which is negative 36. So over here, I'm taking away 36. So you really have to pay attention to your positives and negatives when you get to this step, and make sure you remember to add the correct values over here. All right, so once I've got that set up, now I can factor this. So I still have the 64 out front. This right here, x squared plus 6x plus 9, factors to be x plus 3 squared. We still have the minus 9. This right here factors to be x plus 2 squared equals 36 plus 576 minus 36 just gives me 576. And then from here, notice that my hyperbola equation has to equal 1. Well, right now it equals 576. So to turn that into a 1, I need to divide this by 576. But because I do that, I have to come over here and divide this by 576 and this term by 576. Because whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So then I can just simplify from there. Make sure you're simplifying just the fractional part. So I'm simplifying this and I'm simplifying this. 64 over 576 simplifies to 1/9. So I'm left with x plus 3 squared over 9 minus 9 over 576 simplifies to 1/64. So I'm left with y. Oops, this was supposed to be a y up here. Y plus 2 squared over 64 equals 1. And this then is in the form, standard form for a hyperbola.